At 30,000 feet, most passengers settle into their seats and disappear into the quiet hum of the cabin. But on this flight, something felt different the moment the woman in seat 13F boarded. She looked like any ordinary traveler, calm, tired, maybe even a little nervous, but there was something in the way she scanned the aisle. Something sharp and alert, like she was trained to notice things others missed. No one paid attention to her, until a quiet transmission from the cockpit reached F-22 pilots escorting the aircraft through restricted airspace. They heard a name, one that wasn't supposed to exist anymore. Falcon. The pilots exchanged looks. That call sign belonged to someone legendary, someone who had vanished years ago without a trace. And yet, the data flashing on their screens showed one thing. Falcon was on this commercial flight. Somewhere among the rows of ordinary passengers, the air around the plane suddenly felt heavier. Who was she running from? Or worse, what was she heading toward? Inside the cabin, turbulence rattled the overhead bins. The woman in 13F tightened her grip on the armrest, her eyes shifting toward the window as if she sensed something outside. She wasn't supposed to be seen. She wasn't supposed to be found. And she definitely wasn't supposed to be back in the sky. As the plane pushed deeper into the clouds, the pilots made a decision that would change everything. They needed visual confirmation, and when they finally got it, the truth they saw through the glass shook them to their core. But that was only the beginning. From the cockpit window, the F-22 pilots steadied their view on the passenger jet as it cut through the early morning haze. They weren't imagining it. The woman in 13F really was there. Calm, steady, almost too still, as if she had been expecting company at 30,000 feet. But none of this made sense. Falcon's file had been closed long ago. She was marked inactive, a word the pilots knew was usually code for gone forever. Back inside the cabin, the woman shifted slightly, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Her movements were quiet, controlled. She looked like someone trying to blend into a life she didn't belong to anymore. A mother traveling for work, a teacher going home, a tourist heading for a new start. She could have been anything. But the truth hiding behind her calm eyes was nothing close to ordinary. Passengers around her had no idea that a simple name whispered over a military frequency had changed the flight's entire mood. The pilots were now requesting additional verification. Ground control was digging through old encrypted logs, trying to match the call sign Falcon to any remaining classified signatures. But the deeper they searched, the more redacted pages they hit. It was as if every part of her past had been carefully erased. And yet, someone somewhere had flagged her presence the second she booked this flight. That meant she wasn't just a forgotten operative. She was someone being watched. The plane hit another soft jolt of turbulence, and 13F steadied herself again, her jaw tightening for a brief second. It was subtle, but not subtle enough for someone trained to notice danger before it arrived. Outside, the F-22s adjusted their formation. They weren't preparing for an attack, but they were preparing for something. The F-22s kept a tight orbit around the passenger jet, watching every small movement inside. From their angle, they noticed something the passengers couldn't. 13F had stopped pretending to be relaxed. Her shoulders were slightly tense now, her attention drifting between the window and the aisle, as if she was waiting for a signal no one else could hear. She wasn't afraid. She was calculating. A few rows behind her, a man in a gray jacket adjusted his seat for the third time. Most people would assume he was just uncomfortable. But the woman in 13F caught the reflection of his eyes in the dark glass. He wasn't adjusting, he was watching her. His posture was too alert, his hands never fully settled. And unlike the rest of the passengers, he hadn't touched his drink, not even once. Ground control had picked him up too. His boarding information didn't match his passport. His travel history had gaps, unexplained jumps across countries, and a pattern that hinted he wasn't here for vacation. The F-22 pilots quietly noted his seat number. Suddenly, the situation wasn't just about identifying Falcon. It was about why two trained individuals were on the same flight without knowing the other was there. Meanwhile, the flight attendants sensed the tension without understanding it. They exchanged quiet glances as they moved down the aisle. Something was off. The woman in 13F met one attendant's eyes for a second too long, not pleading, not warning, just acknowledging, almost like she was silently telling her to stay calm. Up in the cockpit, the captain received another encrypted message, one that made him swallow hard. There was a high-level request to check the cargo hold for a heat signature that shouldn't have been there. Something or someone had been loaded before departure. And as the pilots tightened their escort pattern, the truth became painfully clear. This flight wasn't just carrying passengers, it was carrying secrets that were never meant to reach the sky. The captain's voice echoed softly through the cabin, steady but carrying a tension that only a few could detect. Passengers thought it was just routine turbulence ahead, nothing more. But the woman in 13F knew better. She could hear the slight crackle in the announcement, the one that meant the cockpit was handling more than weather. Her gaze shifted again, this time toward the floor, right above the cargo hold where the unexplained heat signature had appeared. Whatever was down there, it wasn't supposed to be on a commercial aircraft. The man in the gray jacket unbuckled his seatbelt just a little, slow and controlled. He wasn't reacting to fear, he was preparing, and that was enough for her to realize he knew about the cargo too. Two people with training, on the same flight, watching each other from across the narrow aisle. neither willing to move first. Outside, the F-22 pilots tightened their formation even more, flying close enough to read the flight number on the jet's tail. A new alert flashed across their screens. Ground control wanted them ready for an emergency descent, but no one could explain what kind of emergency. Every order was vague, fragmented, like someone was trying to keep the truth buried even from the military. Suddenly, the plane jolted, not from turbulence this time, but from something shifting in the cargo hold. A dull thud traveled through the floor, so faint only the trained ears of 13F caught it. Her breath stilled. The man in gray froze to someone, or something, was awake down there. The flight attendants paused. Midel, sensing the sudden change in energy, one of them glanced at 13F again. This time, the woman didn't hide the concern in her eyes. The cabin lights flickered for a moment, just long enough to set every instinct she had on high alert. Whatever was coming next, it wasn't going to stay hidden much longer. The lights steadied, but the brief flicker had already shifted the mood in the cabin. The woman in 13F leaned slightly forward, listening not to the passengers, but to the faint vibration beneath her shoes. The thud from the cargo hold had stopped, but something else had started. A soft, rhythmic tapping, not random, patterned, almost like a coded signal. The man in the gray jacket noticed it too. He sat up straighter, his eyes narrowing, the tension in his shoulders sharp enough to read from 2 rows away. Whatever was in the cargo hold wasn't just shifting around. It was trying to get out. Outside, the F-22 pilots received a sudden update on their screens. A hidden transponder had activated inside the aircraft. Not from the cockpit, not from the passenger cabin, from the cargo bay itself. And the signal wasn't commercial or civilian. It belonged to a deep classified clearance level that hadn't been used in years. The pilots exchanged a look, realizing the stakes had just doubled. Someone had smuggled something on board that not even ground control could identify. Up front, the captain tried to stay calm as alarms flickered across his panel. The transponder was rewriting parts of the plane's navigation system, redirecting it slightly off course just a few degrees at a time. Subtle enough to avoid attention, but enough to make the escort fighters nervous. In the aisle, one of the flight attendants noticed the man in gray rise halfway from his seat. Before she could ask if he needed help, 13F suddenly stood too, not aggressively, just purposefully, almost like she was positioning herself between him and the rest of the passengers. For the first time, their eyes met directly, and that's when the second shock hit. He knew who she was, not from a rumor, not from a file, but personally. His reaction wasn't fear, it was recognition and anger. Whatever was in the cargo hold wasn't the only secret on this plane. Their past was too. The moment their eyes locked, everything the woman in 13F had been holding back finally surfaced. She exhaled slowly, almost like she'd been waiting for this confrontation. The man in the gray jacket stepped into the aisle, keeping his voice low so no one else would hear. "You were supposed to stay buried," he muttered. She didn't flinch. "Then why follow me into the sky?" Before he could answer, a sharp metallic snap echoed from beneath the floor, loud enough this time for nearby passengers to glance around. The cargo hold hatch had released its first latch. Whatever was inside was seconds from breaking through. She moved first in one fluid motion. She stepped past the man and reached for the emergency floor panel just behind the galley. She wasn't opening it, she was sealing it. Locking the hatch from the cabin side meant whatever was in the hold would be cut.